So here we are. This is going to be the Gwadzilla podcast, episode 6. And this will be an interesting one. Another phone interview with images shared in the slide. This podcast will be an interview with photographer Kent Barker. And in the late 80s, Kent did a photo shoot that appeared in a magazine called Regardies. And the photo shoot was called Messengers of the Gods, which is sort of weird because that makes the lawyers the gods when it should be that the messengers are the gods. But he did this photo shoot, and I've seen it, but I don't know much about it. I know a lot of people went out there. I don't know if they got paid for it. I don't know what the call out was. But let's just jump to this. You know, some people are familiar, not other people are not. But hey, Kent, I'm Joel Gwadz. I'm a Washington, D.C. Washingtonian. I guess I wasn't born here, but I'm fascinated by the bike culture. I worked as a bike messenger when this article came out. I know some of the people in the photos. So why don't you start with you can start with a little bit about yourself, and then we'll see where it goes and how we merge into the story about this Regardies photo gig.
Sounds good. So I am a lifelong photographer, as I was telling you as you were setting up. I ended up in Dallas, Texas, because Dallas really is and was, one of the biggest markets for photography in the country. So I had been told about Dallas and went out there, saw that, everything that they said was true, and moved out there. So I ended up doing a lot of work for a guy named Fred Woodward, and Fred came to Dallas a little after I did, but we were the same age. And he came in as an art director and had been hired by our city magazine, D Magazine. And at the time, D Magazine was a very big magazine, and they had a budget, so they were hiring photographers to shoot fashion and portraiture and whatnot. And so Fred and I really got along, and I got great opportunities to do like portrait series with him. And Fred's goal was to become the art director of Rolling Stone magazine, and he did become that. So he had a kind of a trajectory. So he started at D Magazine, then he went to Texas Monthly, bigger statewide magazine, and I did a fantastic series for him while he was at Texas Monthly on rural Texas sheriffs. And it was super fun to do. And it was a really popular piece when it ran. And so Fred then moved on to Regardies, where he had a kind of a brief stay. But I got a call from him, and he's like, hey, I've been seeing all these bike messengers and everything, and I think it would be a fantastic story. Would you come out and do it? And I was like, yeah. So I came out. And so basically what I did was I rented a studio kind of right downtown, and I hired an assistant, and this is terrible, but I'm spacing on the guy that helped me, but he was super good. And I've seen him, since that time. But I hired a local assistant, had a studio downtown, and so I got there and I called a number of the places, that these guys worked, the people that would kind of book them. And I guess one of the people told me that if I really wanted to meet people, that there was like a square in town where they kind of hung out. And so I went there with a Polaroid camera, and it was true. I mean, like, it was like everyone was there hanging out. If they weren't delivering, they were there, like shooting the shit with their friends. So I went down, met people, started talking. And so I would shoot a picture of the person, and then on the back I would get like their contact information, but I would also get like, who booked them, because I would call their I don't know, what was it be? It's not their agent, but it would be who booked them. I'm not sure what.
Yeah, so people would normally work for a messenger or a courier company, and
Right.
those courier companies would they'd have clients, and they have jobs, and they would have car, motorcycle, and bicycle messengers.
Interesting. But I would get who they would work for, right? And it would be on the Polaroid. So I went down, and I think I spent like a couple of days hanging out down there, meeting people and gathering images. And then Fred and I met up, and we like looked through all of the Polaroids, and we picked out who we thought, was interesting, like in a visual way. And so I kind of, had a collection of those images, and then I spent probably another day, just kind of setting things up, because I had the studio. I think I shot for 2 days, maybe 3 days, but I think I did it all in a couple days. But we were calling the various courier places saying, hey, we are doing a magazine story on bicycle messengers, and I met so-and-so, and I'd like to have them be a part of this. Could they come to the studio at 1:00 on Tuesday, with that kind of thing. And so I kind of scheduled my days, and everybody was like excited about it, about the career people were excited, and we did not pay these guys. It was just really, we're doing this, you're going to be in the magazine, and that's what we're doing. So that is kind of how it started. Do you have any questions in regard to that?
So it's very interesting. And so, yeah. So real quick, this was what, 1987, 1989?
Right. I don't remember the exact year.
Okay, well, I think I even have this episode. I have some photos of, at least, of the Regardies. But yeah, so it was late 80s. And so, yeah, the square you're talking about might have even been a circle. It could have been a DuPont circle. Fountain in the middle, benches circulating the, concentric circles around the fountain, one around the fountain, and then one around the whole circle. Or there were so many messengers, yeah, they occupied Farragut Square, Franklin Park, which would also be a square. But yeah, so there were just so many messengers. And it's funny that you took Polaroids. Did you keep the Polaroids?
I don't know that I did. I may have them in a folder somewhere, but I did it with like an SX70. And
so you and 20 other people on the planet know what an SX70 is, and so is that a camera made by Polaroid?
Yes, it was a very popular camera made by Polaroid, and it kind of would be flat, and you'd get a hold of the top and the bottom and pull it, and it would kind of open up, and then you had little packs of Polaroid, and they were really great looking. I mean, mine was actually had leather and brushed like aluminum. It was a very cool camera. And but yeah, you'd pop your little film box in there, and then you'd look through the viewfinder, push the button, and it would spit the thing out, and it was like a square image, and it would develop in like about 60 seconds. But it was perfect for what I was doing, because I had a image of the person, and then I could write on the back of it. And but it really helped me to then meet up with Fred, and we kind of looked at people, so it kind of helped involve him, and together we kind of picked this group of people, because it's a magazine story, so it's limited. You can't shoot a million people. You have to kind of pick your poison. And so we kind of went through and picked out probably, I don't know, 20 or 25 people.
That's amazing. Yeah. So and for me again, I would love to see the Polaroids, and I know that you have negatives that haven't been scanned of messengers that weren't shared in the Regardies photos.
Yes. I mean, what I've sent you, were probably my faves, and a lot of those, maybe not all of them, made it into the magazine. But there were probably others that didn't. But I scanned all those over COVID. When COVID hit and I had nothing to do, I had been talking about going through my archives, and so I actually did that during COVID. And so I went through and picked out of that series all of the ones that I liked the most and scanned them, and that is what I had to send you. So are there others? Yeah, there probably are. I would have to go back and remind those negatives.
Yeah, and of course that would be appreciated, but I understand you must have thousands upon thousands of photographs and negatives, and I just think it's unfortunate, because I get it. Your photos are amazing, and those are photos of amazing people and telling an amazing story, but the rest of the photos, which may not affect you in the same way, they're also members of the culture and the time, and so
absolutely, and it's a document of them. I mean, I will try to go back and find them and to scan any one that I haven't already scanned, and send them to you, because I totally get that. I mean, how, especially if you went and your photo didn't make it, that right there is kind of a disappointment. But it also, for anyone that participated, it's a document of them at a really unique time in their life. And I will say that the culture was amazing. So, I mean, as we photographed, we had a ton of people hanging out around the studio for the entire time that I photographed, because it kind of got known that this was happening. And so, people would come and they'd get photographed, and then somebody else would be there, and then there was just a whole bunch of people hanging out the whole time that it was happening, and it became clear to me that that this culture was a completely unique group of people. They were wild. I mean, they really were wild, and they were very. They had a sense of unity, really, among them, and you probably could speak more to that.
Well, exactly, because I knew the unity and I wasn't accepted. No, I'm kind of messenger adjacent. I dabbled in it, but they coveted their industry, and yeah, I was kind of, but no, it's really not about me. But yeah, I get it because I've been messenger adjacent for a long time, and
Yeah. Well,
and I
they
know a
were
lot
they
of
were
people who have been through it, and people did it for a decade or more.
yeah.
It's an amazing concept.
And there was a wackiness and a kind of a unique style to the people. But what I also loved, and what we kind of tried to show in there, we really tried to be diverse in terms of who we showed. And because there weren't a lot, but there were women messengers. It was a kind of a predominantly male group, but there were women messengers. There were some old guys, that I really loved, and then there was the predominant younger male group, but these people all dressed in really unique, interesting ways. They were really proud of what they did, and it was kind of like they were the cool people, and everybody else just hadn't really gotten it. It's kind of how I felt meeting them. But everyone really had a blast, doing it, because they knew, so the way I did it was I had people scheduled in, and I probably had people coming in like on the hour. So I had, time, but not a ton of time. And my thing was that I wanted to photograph all these people, but I wanted to make kind of unique images, of each person. So I wasn't just like somebody standing with a bike 100 times. And so I was trying to find, ways to use the bike or bike parts, etc., in their photograph, but to change it up every time. And so that was a lot of the creative challenge for me. So when you look at those photos, you can see that they're all of a realm, but they are different. You might see a whole bike or a piece of a bike, and somebody might be sitting on a bike, or they might be, holding it upside down or something. And I guess the other thing was I did a lot of these series, and I liked isolating people on the background. I was a huge fan of Irving Penn, who was he and Avedon were two big contract photographers with Vogue, and they were kind of considered, really at the top of the game of photography during their period of time when they worked. And Penn did this series called The Small Trades, and he and some friends went out and they found all these people like plumbers and bakers and stuff like that, and kind of brought them into the studio and photographed them, just as they were. And I always loved that. And I loved the fact that he kind of isolated them on a background. So I had a friend who painted backgrounds. And so when I would go off and do one of these series, he would make a new background for that series. And sometimes, and this is one of them, I wouldn't have even seen the background until I got there. I just get it, and go. So he was painting on muslin. I mean, the kind of the ideal background is canvas because it's heavier. It doesn't really wrinkle much, but you can't really travel with canvas, because you can't fold it up. It's on a roll, and it's really heavy. But muslin, you can paint it, but you can just fold it up pretty small and go off. And then when you get there, you kind of stretch it out, between stands. You have a big pole that you put it on, and then you clamp it to the side stands, and you bring a kind of a spritzer bottle, and you kind of go and spritz all of the wrinkles, and they kind of relax out, so you can get it to be pretty smooth. But the background that I ended up with, he painted this wild background, because that background, it's kinetic.
Yeah, I did look at the photos, but I didn't look at them closely, and yeah, it seems like maybe it's like a Jackson Pollock, lots of lines.
It's not what I would normally do. Like, I didn't really like backgrounds that, I kind of wanted the backgrounds to be not a flat tone. I liked, the undulation there and giving it some depth. But I generally wasn't really into something like that. So, like, when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, I don't have something else. I'm going to have to do it on this. But what's kind of interesting is that, in a way, the wildness of the background speaks to the wildness of those people. Because, I talk to them a lot about, like, what they do and stuff. And some of these people were wild. I mean, there's a shot of these two guys. They're twins. And they were riding bikes with no brakes.
Yeah, so that would be a fixed gear or a track bike, and it's direct drive. And the first bicycles were ridden like that, and then they developed the freewheel. But yeah, it's a thing that was only continued on a track for track racing, but at a certain point, the messengers gravitated towards it, and it's amazing. It's sort of like they learn how to move on that bike like a hockey skater moves. Like, hockey players they jump side to side and go backwards, and they can use the skates in that you or I can't really understand unless we're hockey players, and I'm not. And these guys, to you or I, you're like, oh my God, no brakes, but you can slow down the rear wheel. But there was a thing with, of course, steering, but with balance and locking up and sliding the rear wheel. And when done right, it's beautiful. But yeah, it's potentially dangerous, I think. Well, it's dangerous to be on a bike alongside cars in general. Yes. And I don't think, some of those guys were just the masters of the craft. They could ride their bikes elegantly through these dangerous situations.
Yeah, so for these guys, like, not having brakes, it was like part of the challenge. And they were, like, really proud of not having that. But it was crazy, like, talking to them about how they navigated all of that. But yeah, it was a wild group. It was a super fun group. I mean,
So who else do you remember? There was one African-American man, and he was dressed up, and he had a mountain bike race jersey on, and his name was Major Lawrence, and he was a friend of mine, and he's an amazing individual because, I mean, the time that you took these photos, like, it was just a different time. Vegetarianism, yoga, those things that are so common now, like, these are the types of things that, like, messengers, like you're saying, they're such an individual group. This is where, like, people learn. I mean, probably of a workplace in that time, there were probably more vegetarian bike messengers than percentage-wise than other industries. I mean,
so they were kind of ahead of their time in a way.
Now, did any of them talk to you? Like sometimes messengers, they weren't always messengers to be messengers. They could have been a messenger because they wanted to be an actor, or they wanted to be a musician or a photographer or anything. Did you catch up with any of those people and get that story?
I mean, I don't remember any. I probably did, but it's not something that I remember at this point. It was so long ago.
How about beer on their breath or the smell of pot?
Well, sure. I mean, yeah, there was definitely serious pot smoking happening just right in the studio. Because as I said, we had a lot of them hanging out the entire time that we shot.
Kent, I wish that this is like the Beatles documentary, like where someone just films the whole thing. Like this could have been your life work,
I wish it would have been a fantastic little mini documentary, the whole event, because it was, like going out, like meeting everybody initially, photographing them, looking at their stuff, choosing people, and then having them come in and having very quickly like this place that we're shooting, because it was kind of a cool studio that was on a second floor downtown. But very quickly we had this whole group of people that were like just hanging out and shooting the shit, and it was like a hangout the whole time. And yeah, people were definitely stoned. I mean, there was the smell of marijuana was wafting throughout the studio all day, and I would shoot pretty long days, probably into the early evening. But I just remember, and I wish I had more of our individual conversations to memory, but I do not. But what I do remember was, how incredibly open these people were, to me. And I think, and I really was... I wanted to make a beautiful photograph of every person, as beautiful as I could do it, as interesting as I could do it. Because part of the whole thing when you're getting hired by a magazine is that, they're hiring you because they know that you have this ability to kind of come in and make interesting photographs of this group of people. And that is something that I was good at, but it was something that I just deeply loved doing. Because I think I told you earlier before we started rolling that I was unique as a photographer in that I was not that interested in photographing famous people. I was what they called in the industry a real person specialist. And I've always, kind of thought that was funny, that designation. But I had this desire to go out and to photograph these interesting subsets of humanity. So
if we go to your webpage, do you have an archive or your portfolio? Where could we see some of these other photo collections?
You really can't see them right now. I am working on an archive where you will be able to see them. And I think within the year, I will have that, where you can go to my website and click on the archive and then go and see these. But they're nowhere to be seen at this point.
Because your work is amazing, and I like these photographs not just because they're of messengers, but they're deep and they're rich, and you captured character. Like you said, I don't know if they're at ease or you connect with them. You're witchcraft in the camera.
Well, I definitely work with them, because I was a dancer early on, and And I did that, like from the time I was 6 until I graduated high school. Went to Joffrey Ballet the day I graduated high school. But I had a knee injury pretty quickly, and then eventually became a photographer, which, really was my calling. But that early background of dance really informed my photography. So, my images are always simple. I'm kind of really about simple lighting and simple imagery. They're not really complex, but shape is super important to me. And so I'm really always working with the subjects, to try to get them in these shapes that are interesting and maybe graceful. And so as I worked with these guys, they could see that I wasn't just random in terms of how I was photographing, that I was really working, to get something really special and beautiful. And I think they really respected that. And so I had just a fantastic time with everyone. And it was, and so the group kind of built inside the studio, because I think they enjoyed watching their friends, get photographed. So it was kind of like a show in a way.
No, without a doubt. I mean, again, as you tell the story, I've created my own vision of the room and people entering and exiting, and it's pre-digital, so you really these could be some of the only photo documentation of a work culture for a period.
Yeah, and I think part of what I loved about doing this is that, yes, I mean, they are documents, of a group of people at a specific time. And so this body of work, it is a document. It's not everybody, but it's a window. It gives you a window into this culture of bicycle messengers, which were, at the time, that was, a for real thing. There was a ton of those people in DC.
Yeah, every major city had them around the world.
So it was a real occupation, and it kind of gave you this little window into the people that, that partook in that way of being. And so I love that about photography, about, its ability to kind of document. And of course, for me, I was not just trying to document them, but I was trying to document them in an aesthetic way. I wanted it to be beyond just a picture of them. I wanted it to be an interesting picture of them, if that makes sense. So I want to ask you, because I think you have things to tell me, because one of the most interesting photographs is a photograph of a guy named, I think is it Jim Rapp?
Yeah, so you took this one photo, and of the photos there, I can picture it in my head. He's standing, and I think both the wheels are off his bike, and maybe he's got his arms out like wings, and not like wings, but down with the wheels at his side.
Yeah, and his legs are kind of crossed, and that's my kind of balletic thing, because he's almost standing in what they call fifth position in dance.
And so he's wearing a helmet, a Bell V1 Pro bicycle helmet, and he's got flower plumage on it.
Exactly. Yeah, and he's got a very interesting top. Also.
Yes. And in that era, he had a girlfriend who custom made cycling shorts, and they would be a little bit colorful. But so here's the story about Jim Rapp, and I'll try and be quick and tell a few things to cover a few areas. So Jim Rapp, he was a complete character. So he's college graduate, college educated, and he worked as a bike messenger. I think he came from the Buffalo era, so he grew up with a hockey background, and in that time, he played. The winters were real in the winter, and so him and other people, including a few other messengers, would play hockey on the reflecting pool in front of the U.S. Capitol. And so, yeah, so this was a crazy time. You got a chance to meet those people. During those times, most of the people lived in group houses. And they would migrate from group house to group house, but sometimes there would be parties. And I could remember seeing Jim Rapp roll into a party on rollerblades in a pre-rollerblade moment. They were more of a hockey thing. It was a Dayglow thing. But he did have some Oakley glasses, Oakley blades that were reflective. And he would be on the dance floor like spinning circles on his rollerblades and just smiling, but maybe on LSD, because in addition to his bike job, and Jim Rapp would not be alone in this. It's a long list of bike messengers who sold weed, but Jim Rapp sold weed and other drugs, and so he was well known to the point where I think that, maybe high school kids could have gone, where can I get weed? Oh, go down to DuPont Circle and look for the guy with the feather on his hat. And he would sell this. And it would amaze me how open he was. And he was like, oh, the cops don't care about weed. It's LSD and mushrooms that are class, whatever. But so the story goes on that here's this person, longtime messenger, friends to many, supplier of stems and seeds, brickweed. It wasn't like he was growing like nice weed, although the story changes because I guess he did grow weed too. And there was a point when he was living in Mount Pleasant, and he had met a friend of a friend, and this guy had told him that he knew how to grow mushrooms, and he was looking for a place to live, and so they had a transaction. Sure, you come live with me and teach me how to grow mushrooms. And it just turns out that the guy who was growing the mushrooms was also eating the mushrooms, and got on the phone and called, the office of the vice president, and just was talking crazy. And so the Secret Service, along with DC police, came and they knocked on the door. When they knocked on the door, it was a tidal wave of the scent of marijuana, and they had the largest number of plant drug busts in the history of Washington at that time. And Jim Rapp ended up going to jail. And I'll just finish that up. Jim Rapp wrote a story from jail called Jackpot in a local newspaper called the City Paper that comes out every Thursday. It's no longer a paper, but it's still online, and you can see that archive and read Jim Rapp's story, Jackpot. But the story gets even more sad because here's this vibrant, live person, and not only are they in jail, but their body develops MS. So he's got multiple sclerosis.
Oh, no.
And it didn't just take over his body, but it took over his mind, and I think he got out of jail, maybe released early, and died a short time after. And so it's a bit of a tragedy, and but I think that the beauty of it is that his story is still told, and that many people, we don't remember him for how his death or whatever, but we remember him for his life. And Jim Rapp was definitely, he was a spokesperson of the messenger world. He represents that moment well for character, individuality, health, wellness, strength, positivity, community. Yeah, Jim Rapp was a lot of great things. And you captured that photo, and I've shared that photo. I just lost you. Let's just see what happened there. And I've shared that photo when I've shared the story of Jim Rapp. So your photos have circulated. I've shared them online, and I've shared them. All right, so I'm recording now, and I'll start in. All right, I've had a little bit of a snafu, funny, not funny. There we were mid interview, and we cut off. And of course, I was thinking that we cut off because of you, but we cut off because of me. And I am currently struggling with a phishing scam. Earlier today, I fell for a phishing scam. I'm over 50. And And
it's so easy to do. So easy to do. I mean, they're so good at it these days. I mean, it's you really got to be on your toes at all times.
yeah, so we got cut off. And so basically where we were, we had talked about Featherhead, and I had kind of been talking about Featherhead. And so now we can transition, and let's get back to you. And so one of the things, I was curious about a few things, and you can take these ideas and answer as long or as short as you wish. Two things, like, did you know you were going to shoot black and white? Because you've talked well about your process, and are you normally just a black and white photographer, or did you take both black and white and color? And then also there's a question of, I just was curious if each of the people who had their photo taken, if each of them got a copy of those photos.
All right. So let me say. So initially, yeah, I was a commercial shooter. So I would shoot color or black and white for my jobs. But the editorial work that I did, and by that I mean jobs for magazines, I considered my personal work. And the thing about when you worked for magazines is that you didn't make much money. The pay was very low. So the trade-off was that your name was on it, you got publicity for it. And so I adopted a thing where when I did work for magazines, I kind of had to do it the way I wanted to do it. And if they wanted it to be more like a job, so they were like, hey, we want to hire you, but we're going to do it like this, I would respectfully decline the job. Because for me, I felt like I'm not getting paid a lot. My name is on this. And so if I don't do like what I do, like make it like my real style, then it kind of does me a disservice because it's out there with my name on it. And if I'm doing like something that's not me, then it gives a bad signal. So I was really, very adamant about that. But when I worked for Fred was like one of the greatest art directors you could ever work for, and really, went on to become one of the greatest magazine art directors of all time. But he loves photography still, and so he got what you did and just wanted you to do it. So there was really never a problem, with that shooting for him. But I loved black and white photography. It was kind of what got me into photography, like being in the darkroom. It was like magic, and I just loved it. And so my personal work was largely done in black and white. So I shot with a Hasselblad, so it's what they call like a medium format camera, fairly big negative. But one of the things that I loved about using medium format, because I also, was using flash in like a studio, I had a Polaroid back, and I could pull the Polaroid, and I could get a really good idea of, like my composition, what my lighting was looking like. And so it really was a tool that I loved. But I would, I shot the job, then I would come home, process the film, make contact sheets. Fred and I would look at the contact sheets. I would have, images that I would think were really good, and we would kind of determine, what images I was going to print for the magazine. And again, Fred generally deferred, to my choices. Occasionally, he would have something else, and usually it was a really good thing where it was something that I was, I don't know, like for some reason not looking at, and I should have been looking at it, but and then I would make the prints myself in the darkroom, and so that's what they would, use for the magazine.
So that that's amazing, and just a quick question. So are you saying that you went back to your hotel and you developed the film and then you printed the prints in the hotel room?
No. Once the job was done, I went back to Dallas, processed the stuff, made contact sheets, and then I would send a set of the contact sheets to Fred.
Now, how many, so, you and I can picture in our minds maybe some of those poses. Now, how many photos of each of those people did you take?
Well, you were shooting film, and so, I wasn't shooting maybe as carefree as I do today with digital, because there was and I was always a pretty deliberate shooter, and so I would shoot maybe 3 or 4 rolls a person, maybe 8 total, if I was really going for it. But I was pretty deliberate about what I did, so I wasn't just like wildly banging them off. But even so, that still adds up, because, as I said, I shot probably 15 or more, 15 to 20, 25 people altogether.
Yeah, that's...
So it was still a bit of work, but, not ridiculous. But this was a day when a magazine would actually pay for it. So the magazine, paid for me to fly there, paid for me to stay in a hotel, paid for me to rent a studio, paid for my assistant, paid my meals, and then, paid for all the film and the processing and everything. And like today, man, that just rarely is going to happen with a magazine like that, like a regional magazine. That day is over.
Yeah, someone would get $250 for the day right now,
Right. And as I said, I didn't make a lot. You didn't get paid. Your day rate wasn't a lot. But, you got all of your expenses paid. You got to shoot what you wanted to do. And of course, these kinds of projects, were exactly what I wanted to do. And so I was in heaven, because I was like living my dream and somebody was paying for it. It was awesome.
Okay, so in this podcast, I often ask the person who I was interviewing how old they were at the time when they were a bike messenger. How old were you at the time when you did the photo shoot?
Well, I'm 73 now, right? So I was in my 30s, I guess. We'd have to, add it up or subtract it up, but I shot it. Did you have a magazine? Because I don't remember the exact date, but I'm going to think that it was in the maybe mid to late 80s.
Yeah, I think exactly. I think it was like 87 or 88. But I'll find out because, yeah, I did pull out some, I took photos of the actual magazine, not like scanned, but looking like a magazine, and posted those years ago online. I kept a bicycle blog and I shared those. And it's, I think the story, just like the Featherhead story, you think, oh, is the Featherhead story told too much? Or, these photos will resurface. And I think that there's an appreciation for them. And I think that, I don't know. I think you should consider it fun, that yeah, like your photos are very relevant, and, I think that it's part of your legacy. So real quick, and we can get back to the messenger thing, but you talked about this guy Fred and Rolling Stone. You also talked about that you don't really like, your goal was never to shoot famous people, but you more than likely shot famous people. And with your connection with Fred, did you do any photo shoots for Rolling Stone?
I did, yeah, but I didn't do like a ton of stuff for him, because if he was able to hire the best photographers, in the world. And so I was lucky to get some assignments from him. It was awesome. But yeah, I mean, what did I do? I shot Willie Nelson. That was fun, but strange. I shot Lyle Lovett, who I really love. I deeply love Lyle, and I mean, he was just the kindest guy. And if you've never seen like Lyle Lovett and his big band, I highly recommend that you see them, because he's getting older and that's not gonna keep happening that long. But I consider Lyle Lovett and his big band like a national treasure.
That's fantastic. And you don't have to continue on the list, because that's pretty impressive. But so we spoke earlier about you, and you had a COVID project. So are any of those photos, like, are those on your webpage, or?
As I say, they're really not. And this, I mean, I guess I'm a little embarrassed that they're not, but I'm working on that. And I am going to have a thing where you can see them and potentially even, buy them. So, as I said, within the year, I'll have that out there.
Well, that's exciting, because, it's not just a topic, but it's the quality of the photographs. And I'm sure that, you shot other topics that are equally as compelling. And, your portraiture or your commissioned work, like the Rolling Stone stuff. I mean, of course, Willie Nelson and Lyle Lovett are each people who have a lot of character to their face. And, character is like the thing that, somehow you're able to capture.
Yeah, no, it was super fun. And so, yeah, but I did a lot of series, like this one. So I think I had talked about shooting the rural Texas sheriffs, that I did for Fred. And that was it was very popular series, just because those guys are just, kind of exactly what you would expect. And kind of funny too. But I shot, what else did I do? I shot buskers. I had these friends who did like these outdoor art shows, and they told me about this annual busker festival. So, buskers are people that like perform on the street, and they're really kind of like they're very vaudevillian. A lot of juggling and stuff like that. And so it was amazing. So they did this in Key West, and it went on for like a whole week. And I went there and photographed these people. And again, it was kind of like the Bicycle Messengers, in that it was this just wild group of people, that were, so other than what you would normally meet or run into. And, they had all kinds of crazy costumes, and they were also, like physically amazing in kind of a lot of the things that they could do. Super fun. Then I had, like an art director friend who was in Chicago, and she knew my penchant, for this kind of thing. And so she called me up one weekend and said, I just read in the paper that we're going to have the...
Can we pause real quick?
Yeah.
Because my device just, a raindrop hit it.
Oh, no.
And,
Oh, I love the bird noises.
This is crazy. But, yeah, so you were talking about...
I was talking about other series that I did that were similar, but kind of getting off topic a little bit.
But I think it's all important, it's all relevant, and I think it's interesting, and I think that you're interesting, and I think your photography is interesting. And yeah, and thank you. I think we will close up. I'm being eaten alive. You enjoyed the the birds. These birds need to eat these mosquitoes. I'm being eaten alive by the mosquitoes, and it's been a very frustrating day for me with my debacle of.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
it's a major thing, you know. With my email information, they have emails to investments and whatnot.
Oh my God.
And so I've got a lot of phone calls to make, but I don't have a phone to use.
Not good.
Yeah, so I'm gonna I'm gonna go get on some emails, and I might play with this for a few minutes to distract myself. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to share, you know, your photos and your stories. I'm gonna post this on the Gwadzilla podcast, and I'll send you a link to that. And
Thank you.
I think the photos are fun. And you know, email me in the future if you put up any photos of any of your topics, and especially if you decide to resurrect more of the DC Messenger photos.
Yes, I will, you know, go find those files and see what else there is, you know, and I know that there's going to be things that I didn't, you know, scan. I'm very funny about that. I only like what I like, and so if it's like doesn't meet my standard, then forget it. You know, I'm not going to print it. But I'm sure there are things in there that I have not printed, and that those people might, you know, would like to have a copy of it for sure.
And I think you know, I think our idea of beauty or our opinion on things, you know, over the years might change. I know what you're saying, like you wouldn't want to be represented by this or that, but you might like, oh, I didn't realize that actually it's actually a stronger photo than I thought it was.
Indeed, and just the relevance too, you know, of the time and everything else. I mean, a photograph that at the time might not have jumped out at me now has a lot more meaning to it.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why, yeah, I'm glad, and you know, this podcast, if it spurred some excitement to get you back on that project, and then that's good too.
For sure. Yeah, thank you so much. It's been so much fun.
Yeah, and good luck to you. And you know, I'll probably poke around the web and see if I can find a Willie Nelson or a Lyle Lovett photo by you.
All right, sounds good.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye. All right, that was really an awesome interview with Kent Barker, photographer, and a photographer who documented the DC bicycle messenger scene for a photo shoot with Regardies magazine. I will be sharing those photos and links to see Kent Barker's work. Thank you, Kent, and thank you for listening. Have a good day. Bye.